This one's going to be a heater, guys. This one's going to be a heater. I'm ready for the comment section on this one, but welcome into another DLF YouTube channel video. What's up, all you Dynasty Leaguers? We need to be talking about Kyle Pitts and his current valuation in rookie drafts and startup drafts. What is going on with Kyle Pitts? Because a lot of people are already putting him up on this mantle, and he hasn't even played a snap in the NFL. We don't even know if he's actually going to be good or not. They've put him up on this mantle that already suggests that he is, the next best tight end, that he deserves to be up there with Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller, ahead of TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, Noah Fant. He's already in that pedestal of the tight ends. And I think that's a little bit ridiculous. So what this video is, and what I've been trying to, think about and wanting to do for a while, is create a video around the 10th man rule. And if you don't know the 10th man rule, quick introduction. It's from the movie World War Z. It's that Brad Pitt zombie movie. I just recently watched it, and I was reminded about this video segment that I've been wanting to do for a while. But the 10th man rule, I'll let the video explain it.
So we decided to make a change.
Change?
The 10th man. If 9 of us look at the same information and arrive at the exact same conclusion, it's the duty of the 10th man to disagree. No matter how improbable it may seem, the 10th man has to start digging with the assumption that the other 9 are wrong.
And you were that 10th man.
Precisely.
So the 10th man rule, if you didn't catch it, is basically saying if 9 other people with the same information come to the exact same conclusion, it is the responsibility of that 10th person to look into the opposite. What happens if the opposite happens? So what I'm going to do here, kind of in this video, is everybody thinks that Kyle Pitts is already the next greatest thing. What happens if he's not? Is he even the next greatest thing? And can we even ascertain that from his film and stats and analytics and all that stuff? Because I am going to venture to say by the end of this video that I will have made the argument that he is not very unique, not super special, and definitely not the greatest tight end prospect of all time. So hopefully you guys stick around. This might be a little bit of a long one, but let's get into the video. So let me start off first, because this is not an anti-Kyle Pitts video. I want to make that clear. This is not anti-Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is my tight end 1 in this class for sure. And there's definitely a lot of good. I'm going to talk about the good here real quick before we start knocking him down a peg and setting realistic expectations for Kyle Pitts, because he is a very, very good prospect. He's obviously a very good player. 6'5", 245 pounds, ran a 4.44 40-yard dash at his pro day. He's basically a wide receiver playing at tight end, which is highly valuable for both the NFL and fantasy football. So all of that is extremely understandable. You watch his film, he's a massive red zone threat. 8 of his 12 touchdowns in 2020 came inside the 20. A lot of them were pulled down just right into the end zone over even some defenders, linebackers, DBs, and stuff like that. He's fantastic inside the red zone, winning 50-50 balls. He's also a fantastic field stretcher. Obviously, with that 4.44 speed, he can get vertical. He can, get into the end zone and break off long touchdown runs quick. He did that a couple times in 2020 as well, with a 71-yard catch and run against Mississippi and a 56-yard catch and run touchdown against Kentucky. So he can do all of it. And that's why a lot of people really, really like Kyle Pitts. Analytically, he's also awesome as well. I said in the video that I did on Kyle Pitts, breaking him down in my prospect videos, that he even finished 10th in Heisman voting in 2020, which is the first time in over 40 years that a tight end has done that. He's amazing. He's 100% the tight end 1 in this class, but I still believe that he's being overdrafted as the current 1.05 in one quarterback leagues and the 1.07 in Superflex rookie drafts. So let's get into this, because the first thing I want to make a note of is we don't really know what a generational tight end looks like. At least athletically, measurably, we don't really know. Here is a list of every tight end who has had multiple top 5 fantasy seasons in the NFL since 2000, with Kyle Pitts also down there at the bottom just for comparison. So you can see from this table that there's not a whole lot of super consistency here. Some of them had varying ranges of collegiate success, varying anywhere from Jeremy Shockey had 61 receptions for 815 yards and 10 touchdowns in his career in college, all the way up to, Todd Heap and Zach Ertz and Kellen Winslow were super massive, contributors to their collegiate stats, and they were fantastic. And Kyle Pitts is on the high end of that with 118 over his entire collegiate career. But there's varying levels there. There's nothing that suggests that you have to be a fantastic college stat line to be good in the NFL. Height and weight obviously are similar for all tight ends. Just to play the tight end position, you're probably 6'4" to 6'6", 250 pounds, something like that. A lot of these guys are pretty athletic. Some of them are not. Randy McMichael, Chris Cooley, Zach Ertz, obviously. These guys weren't long speed guys. They ran in the 4.7s, 4.8s. There are a lot of the guys who run sub 4.5, sub 4.6. There's varying levels of vertical, bench, broad jump, 3-cone, shuttle, even draft capital, which is super important for tight ends. You want to see the first round draft capital, which you do see from a handful of the guys in here, but you also see 3rd, 4th, even 5th for George Kittle. So there's just a lot of stuff going on with the tight end, and it's a really, really hard position to be able to lock in and be successful at, especially being successful for multiple years. So just that in and of itself, I think it's really hard to label Kyle Pitts as a generational tight end because we don't really know what that looks like. Speaking on Kyle Pitts more specifically, I also think that we have seen this before. I think that we have seen Kyle Pitts before. And you guys might think I'm crazy, but I went into my combine database and merged in college stats, and I looked at and filtered down every tight end between 6'4" and 6'6" who weighed between 240 and 250 pounds and ran a sub 4.5 40-yard dash, and a list of 5 tight ends, including Kyle Pitts, came out in this filter. So just right there, you can see that Pitts is one of 5 other tight ends to have entered the NFL coming out of college with his exact same measurables and speed and athleticism. Just looking at this, one of them has a top 5 season, and there's only one top 5 season out of these 4 other NFL guys, and then Kyle Pitts, and that's Jared Cook. And if you actually look at Jared Cook and Kyle Pitts, like athletically, they're like the same dude. They're both 6'5". They're both 245 pounds. They both have a 29 BMI. They are 0.05 seconds apart in a 40-yard dash. Pitts ran a 4.44. Jared Cook ran a 4.49. They both have a very similar speed score. Jared Cook has him beat in vertical and bench. They both are basically identical in bench. Pitts has Cook beat in broad jump. And then the only difference at the end of the day, come draft day, is that Kyle Pitts is going to be a first rounder and Jared Cook was a 3rd rounder. But they're like the exact same person. So where was the hype for Jared Cook back when Jared Cook came out? I also want to note that Noah Fant is also on this list as well, which is kind of crazy and ridiculous because when you look at Noah Fant, he is 6'4", 250 pounds, has a 4.5 40-yard dash, all the other measurables to go with it, and then was drafted in the 1st round as well. But none of that hype was also on Noah Fant. The dude was barely a top 100 overall pick in one quarterback drafts. He was the 11th tight end off the board in startups. Nowhere near remotely as close to what you need to get to Kyle Pitts right now, the current tight end 4 off the board in startups. And Noah Fant was, for all intents and purposes, a very, very similar prospect to Kyle Pitts, but did not have the hype. Now, I also said that we have seen this before again as well, in terms of we have seen the greatest tight end prospects of all time. We have said everything that we've said about Kyle Pitts throughout this whole offseason before. I'm going to show you guys some quotes. These are legitimate quotes that I pulled from the internet about a former tight end coming out of college into the NFL. And then let's see if you guys can get who that tight end is. So this first one here doesn't have an obvious weakness to exploit. He's strong and explosive enough to easily fight through press coverage from bigger linebackers and pulls away after he beats them off the line. His blend of size and speed makes him too much for defensive backs to handle. He possesses a high level of athleticism for a tight end. To take advantage of his speed and agility, his college would often split him out wide or put him in the slot. He's a speedy tight end with big playability, and he fits the mold of the modern tight end. This other one, dangerous pass receiving tight ends have become a rage in the NFL, and he is the top tight end prospect to enter the pros since Vernon Davis in 2006. He's extremely fast for a tight end. With his size, athleticism, and speed, he looks like a matchup nightmare for an NFL offense. He produced long touchdowns and killed teams down the middle with his speed and athleticism. He is too big for safeties to cover and has the speed to run by even defensive backs. When the secondary can stay with them, he has great leaping ability and body control to make catches over defenders. Linebackers have little chance of covering him in man. Only elite NFL linebackers with great speed could cover him. As a pro, he could be used as a typical tight end, an H-back, or even a slot receiver. He looks like a potential high-impact receiving tight end in the NFL, and as a prospect is a top 10 athlete and talent who should go in the first 20 picks. That was all one huge quote from a prospect profile that I pulled. All three of these quotes were on the same tight end back in 2014 about the 10th overall pick in the 2014 NFL draft, Eric Ebron. And I don't know if any of that sounded familiar, but that's like all the same stuff we're saying about Kyle Pitts. Now, I'm not saying that Pitts is Eric Ebron. It was known that Eric Ebron didn't have the most fantastic hands for a receiving tight end, but everything else about Eric Ebron, in terms of what we said about him, all sounds very, very similar to Kyle Pitts. So we have seen that before. And then I also want to bring up, in one of those quotes, they mentioned Vernon Davis. Vernon Davis is the actual best tight end prospect of all time. And he measured in at 6'3", 254 pounds, ran a 4.38 40-yard dash, posted a 42-inch vertical, 33 reps on the bench press, 7-second shuttle, and was the 6th overall pick in the 2006 draft. He was the best tight end prospect of all time. Not Kyle Pitts, Vernon Davis. From a college production and athletic standpoint, he has everything that you had wanted from a tight end. And like Eric Ebron, though, who took 4 years in the NFL to actually have a top 5 fantasy season, Davis also took 4 years to have a top 5 fantasy season in the NFL and only had it 3 top 5 seasons, 2 of which were largely on the backs of 13 touchdown seasons. So, say what you want about Vernon Davis. He was very good for fantasy, but a lot of that was either lucky touchdown scoring, or he did get the volume in a couple other seasons as well and managed to have a few top 10 overall seasons, top 5 overall seasons, but was not this Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski, Jimmy Graham type of a tight end for an extended period of time, even though he was the greatest, tight end prospect of all time, all things considered. So then I also wanted to look at what does it take to become a top 5 fantasy tight end in the NFL, because that realistically is the hit rate for Kyle Pitts. He needs to, in a short period of time within his first 2 or 3 years, need to be a top 5 difference-making tight end in fantasy football to justify taking him in the early first of your one quarterbacks and the mid first of your superflex drafts over a lot of other very, very good prospects as well. So I looked at it, and what does it take to actually become a top 5 fantasy tight end? Well, the biggest factor is actually being the first or second target on your team in a high volume target offense. Since 2004, 90.6% of all top 5 tight ends were either the first or second target on their team. And so if you look at the players that were not the first or second target on their team, if you look at the similarities between all of them, then you can notice that a lot of them either had double-digit touchdowns or were the third or fourth target on a team with still over 100 targets on the season. So they were on a very high volume passing offense. Like, think about like the Dallas Cowboys, the Atlanta Falcons, or the Pittsburgh Steelers, where they can support 3 legitimate weapons with all over 100 targets. Or you get lucky and you get double-digit touchdowns like Mark Andrews 2 years ago or Robert Tonyan last year, and you can be able to then, manage to get inside the top 5 with some high touchdown efficiency, which is not very predictable. So going off of those numbers, I actually went down through the entire first 15 picks of the NFL draft to see where can Kyle Pitts land that would realistically be able to put him in as a top 2 target on his team, or at least a high volume offense that could support potentially 2 or 3 very high volume fantasy receivers and a tight end, right? So I went down through every single pick looking for that, trying to give justifiable arguments for, can you see in the very short term Kyle Pitts ascending to the first or second target on an NFL team. So knocking out the first 3 picks, the Jaguars, the Jets, and the 49ers, they're all taking a quarterback. We'll start at 4. 4 is the Atlanta Falcons, who have seen him mocked to a ton recently. And the Atlanta Falcons would be interesting. Julio and Calvin Ridley are there, so at least in 2021, I don't think that he's going to get the target volume there. Maybe 2022, depending on how Julio and Matt Ryan go. But if you have Matt Ryan there next year, are we talking about another quarterback for the Falcons next year? Is Julio still there, preventing, Kyle Pitts from ascending to being the second target on the team? This is another team, though, that does throw over 600 pass attempts per season, almost annually, and could realistically have 3 top targets on their team like Austin Hooper was just a couple years ago, even with Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. I don't know if that happens immediately within year 1, maybe year 2, maybe it's year 3 instead. But the Atlanta Falcons are probably one of the better situations in terms of where he could actually go to. It's just whether or not they end up pulling the trigger there. Then Cincinnati Bengals are at 5. They were actually one of a few teams in 2020 with 3 100 target receivers, and AJ Green was one of them, who they just lost. It would be probably a good spot for Kyle Pitts, with Joe Burrow showing that he was able to throw a lot and really liked the tight end position at the beginning of the year last year. But if I were the Bengals, I'm not passing up on Penny Sewell. And if they do pass on Penny Sewell, I think it's for Jamar Chase or a wide receiver, not Kyle Pitts. 6 is the Miami Dolphins. This one is also really interesting because realistically, you could make the case that he ascends to the first or second target by next year. So immediately they at least have Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki. But Will Fuller's on a 1-year deal. He could leave. Devontae Parker is about on his way out. He's on his cap casualty. After next year, he's going to be 28, 29 years old. Mike Gesicki is rumored to being shopped right now. So all this stuff could be changing very rapidly if Kyle Pitts actually ends up going there. And I think the Miami Dolphins could be the best landing spot for Kyle Pitts in the top 10, at least, if he does end up not sliding out of the top 10. Detroit, I think, would be another really interesting spot. And Detroit would be one of those teams where I would prefer him to actually line up and be a real wide receiver, not be a tight end. He could realistically be another Calvin Johnson or Kenny Golladay, and be a very, very good wide receiver 1 for the Detroit Lions, even in a Jared Goff offense in the short term. And that would he would come in and be at least the first or second target with TJ Hawkinson off the rip. Would be pretty good spot. It's just whether or not that he would actually convert to a wide receiver, I think, is the biggest point for the Detroit Lions. Carolina Panthers, I don't see that happening. They have DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Christian McCaffrey. I don't know how Kyle Pitts gets any volume. Denver Broncos, basically the same thing between Sutton, Jared Jeudy, and then Noah Fant as well. So I don't really know where the volume comes from for Kyle Pitts there. Dallas Cowboys, same thing. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard. I don't get that one either. New York Giants, Saquon Barkley, Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, and I don't know where the volume comes from there either. It could happen in a year or two if Sterling Shepard goes out, Evan Ingram's not on the team, but it seems weird, and I don't really trust Daniel Jones. Philadelphia Eagles, again, another team like the Detroit Lions who needs real wide receivers, not another tight end. And so this would be a team, if he does go to Philly, I would want him to be a wide receiver, and have Goddard be like his own thing. And so it would just be Goddard, Pitts, and Jalen Reagor with Pitts on the outside. Don't know if that happens. Don't even know if Pitts is sliding this far. LA Chargers, I think, would be the best spot for him overall at 13, being with Justin Herbert being the wide receiver 2 or the second target behind Keenan Allen. Mike Williams is on his way out after this year. He has his 5th-year deal in 2021, but then he's gone. Jared Cook signed a 1-year deal, gone. So it's Herbert, Allen, Eckler, and Kyle Pitts. I really, really like that a lot in a high-volume passing offense with one of the youngest and best quarterbacks in the top 15. I like it a lot. Minnesota Vikings are next up at 14. Thielen, Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Irv Smith. Not a volume 1 there. New England Patriots, they're finally at 15. Jonnu and Hunter Henry, and then Kyle Pitts. That would just be crazy. I think Twitter would burn down. It could be a lot of fun to just think about, but I don't really like it for fantasy football. So that's at least the 4 through 15 teams that pick where could he realistically go to have an immediate impact and be able to help you guys justify taking him as high as you possibly will be in your rookie drafts. Just to kind of wrap this one up, because I know this is getting to be kind of a longer video, but I really just wanted to share with you guys a lot of my concerns with Kyle Pitts, at least at his current price. It's the price for me. I have no problem with the player whatsoever, but he's currently being taken as the tight end 4, as the 43rd player off of the board. That is the highest a rookie tight end has ever gone, and it's almost on par with Evan Ingram's ADP, right after Ingram's historic best tight end fantasy season of all time. He was the 40th player overall. Pitts is already the 43rd player overall. Doesn't even have a team yet. It's April, and that's how high he's going. So what I find tough to be about Pitts' ADP is I don't know how much more we can expect it to rise. He's already a 4th round asset, and if he has a mediocre or not a great fantasy season in his rookie year, does his price go up? Does it? I don't think it drops significantly. People aren't going to be willing to just, get off of the tight end that they invested so much in their rookie drafts in year 2, who has the potential to break out more down the road, and we know how tight ends are. But he's not going to rise, I think, even with a fantastic rookie season. And by fantastic, I mean close to Evan Ingram's best rookie season of all time, which wouldn't even have been a top 5 fantasy season last year. I think with that, I find it hard for him to rise even more into, the 3rd round or whatnot, because then you're going to be really taking him over top stud wide receivers in the NFL. Like, you're going to be taking him over actual good players. And so I don't know how much more we can expect his price to rise. Therefore, I think that he's kind of capped in terms of value ceiling. And I think that that's a really easy play and player to sell in Dynasty and just wait. Maybe his price drops after year 1, year 2. Maybe it becomes more affordable this time next year. The 2022 class right now is not looking all that great. So maybe you can sell a similar pick like the 105 in next year's draft class for Kyle Pitts after year 1, after you've already seen it. And that, I think, could make some sense next year. But now I find that really hard to do in this year's class, just because I haven't seen Kyle Pitts. Tight ends in and of themselves are kind of crapshoots, and we don't really know what a generational tight end looks like. Pitts isn't necessarily a unique tight end, or a tight end that we have never seen before. And it takes time for tight ends to develop in the NFL, no matter how good they actually are, to take at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 seasons to actually hit and be a difference maker for your fantasy roster. So like I said, this is all stuff that I just wanted to make sure everybody heard before the NFL draft, before your rookie drafts, so then you can have the best possible opinion and hear everything all about Kyle Pitts for you to be able to make your own opinion about Kyle Pitts and take him and push that draft button whenever you're on the clock at whatever pick you are. So I'm not trying to, pull anybody away from taking him or having, the need or want to take him super high because you believe in him. If you believe in him, go for it. But I think you should hear all opposing sides to Kyle Pitts and why it might not be the absolute best idea to take him possibly as high as you are or where he is now. So with that all being said, thank you all for sticking through me on all of this. I did actually write an article about this as well. It is on Dynasty League Football. The link is down in the description below, so go check that one out. It dropped last week, so if you're a DLF subscriber, you've had access to this article for over a week before I put it on this video. So you can go check out. I have a lot more stuff in that article. Become a DLF subscriber, and you can read everything that I possibly wrote in this whole entire Kyle Pitts article, more than what was in this video. But I just wanted to highlight some of the key main points for the arguments against Kyle Pitts in this video. So with that all being said, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll catch you all later.